how we kind of came up with the idea of this series, Let's Get Real. Let's have some real conversations about the fallout, really, for our families and for caregivers, and just the stress that we're all under. Um, I know I'm not alone in this, but and this is informal, so you're welcome to unmute. But how many of you have experienced um, depression in your family, whether it's yourself, the person you're caring for, or a close family member during the past 10 months? And you can raise a hand or certainly unmute and speak if you want to. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Simone, for putting that in the chat. Um, what's really difficult right now is trying to discern what's normal and what's abnormal when it comes to some of the things that we're seeing. Like, how do you know it's depression, right? How do you know that something's going on that's not normal? And it's hard to tell, isn't it, during this time? And so some of the behaviors we commonly see um, that kind of look similar, like the behaviors you see with depression and the behaviors we are seeing with the pandemic, they mirror each other. And so some of those things that we're seeing are restlessness, right? You're just about to go crazy. Irritability or maybe lashing out at your loved one. Janice, thumbs up. Yep. So, there's
Yes.
increased anger towards either your care recipient, or just that relationship may have more friction right now. um how about, is anyone else other than me gaining weight and overeating?
Oh,
That,
yes.
yes, yes. So, and depression and stress can affect you in a lot of different ways when it comes to eating disorders. So some folks some folks lose weight and they do the opposite. But either way, it's a problem. Let's see. How about sleeping too much or just feeling tired all the time? That feeling of just being lethargic and lack of energy.
Yes,
A
I
lot
do.
of us are, yes, a lot of us are feeling that because of the pandemic, but that's also a huge red flag for depression. Um, Changing in routine. Wow. If you have children at home, and especially if you're a caregiver caring for older adults and you have children at home, boy, has your routine changed. This has probably been the biggest thing that's upset my family with a 16-year-old and a 21-year-old. Is I have a college junior that is now all of a sudden he's back at home when he'd been gone for 2 years. And then I have a high school junior that is studying remotely and learning remotely from home. That's a huge, huge change in routine, isn't it? Um, how about we haven't been able to be involved in the things that we enjoy, activities outside of the home? One of the hallmarks of depression is not participating in activities that bring you joy. Well, we've all kind of been forced into that. And so that can certainly feed depression. Um, how about economic insecurity, of just, or uncertainty rather, economic uncertainty, um, not knowing what the future holds for your finances, worry and stress over maybe where the next paycheck's going to come from, or whether you're going to, you know, have to make changes to your lifestyle because of less money coming in. Um, One of the another hallmarks of depression is the ability to focus and lack of concentration. I feel like the pandemic has made that worse for me too. Anybody else feel that just kind of chaotic feeling? Yeah. Yeah. So that makes it really hard to discern what's normal and what's abnormal when everything right now kind of seems abnormal. And it's depression. We're finding out is affecting families and adults, children, adolescents that have never ever dealt with those mental health issues before. And for the first time ever in their life, it may be an adult or a teenager, for the first time ever in their life, they're experiencing these symptoms and having to reach out to find resources. And a lot of times people, if you've never experienced anxiety or depression, you don't know where to turn. And so we're finding that a lot of families for the first time ever are seeking resources. And I'm sure, Carly, are you getting calls like that are first time family members, first time caregivers calling?
Yes. Just because, it's obviously bringing on abnormal stress on top of the stressors that they already deal with. But even just COVID having the reality of these caregivers not being able to receive respite has thrown a huge hook in so many caregivers' lives, that they're having to deal with a whole new form of isolation, loneliness, burnout, just everything. Yes.
Yeah, COVID-19 has certainly added kind of like an extra layer of isolation to the already isolating job of being a caregiver. And
Mhm.
so it, like you said, it took away maybe those opportunities for respite and to have a break. And now it's even more isolating. So that just feeds depression. It feeds anxiety. It feeds other issues and thoughts of suicide we're going to talk about today as well. Um, we're also coming out of a holiday season where we may not have been able to even be with our family and we had to celebrate from a distance. So that's even another layer when we're looking at this being January, which is kind of the beginning of seasonal depression that a lot of people sometimes deal with every year. But I think right now you're going to start to see people who've never, ever, ever dealt with depression, never had seasonal depression, even, that are now starting to have depression this time of year because after 10 months of this, like, layer upon layer upon layer of stress and isolation, and now here it is, and it's cold and it's gloomy and you can't go outside and do the things even outside that we want to do. And so I think the mental health world needs to prepare themselves for an influx of calls, and if certainly you guys at Alabama Respite will probably continue to get those calls too. um, Helping individuals reach out to find resources. That's one of the things that I love about my job. And I talk to families almost every day about home health services, of course, because that's what I do. That's how that's who pays me. But I never hang up the phone without helping that family find other resources. If I hear something in a conversation that they mention that they need other things, Meals on Wheels, or resources in other areas. Connecting families to resources like Alabama Respite is something I enjoy. Um, so, other signs of depression. We've talked about a lot of different things here. I mentioned sleeping a lot or feeling tired a lot, but anybody else having trouble staying asleep, falling asleep, staying asleep? I wake up in the night often. A few people,
Mhm.
Denise is nodding her head. Yeah. I want to check the chat too to make sure I don't miss a question. Yeah. Um, you know, for me, if I don't get enough sleep, boy, that makes for a rough day, doesn't it? And if you're a caregiver, you have to get sleep. Um, and we're going to talk about self-care is so important, and sometimes all self-care is just getting a shower, getting 8 hours of rest. But sleep disturbances can certainly be a sign of depression if you're not sleeping well. What's the number one thing that keeps y'all up at night?
For me, it's thinking of all the things that I did not get accomplished that day that are now going to be added on tomorrow's agenda, and how am I going to get tomorrow's things done on top of the things I didn't get done today? So, stressors of things that I failed to get done that needed to get done, and my mind just goes crazy thinking
Mhm.
of already how tired I am, and just, I didn't prioritize my time well, or I just didn't have enough time in the day, or, just the factors of being too busy.
Yeah. You have that ongoing to-do list in your brain.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Worrying, anxiety. Janice, what do you want to say?
I was going to just say that I agree with Carly. Also, I have found myself also kind of like thinking about what I have to do, and like you said, worrying is another. I actually just had a night like that, just night before last. I twist and I turn and I turn and I twist, and Kyrie was sleeping very well. But about 4 o'clock, I just had to get up, and I was just up. I
Yeah.
didn't sleep well, and then we lost a family member. Well, Kyrie lost his great aunt due to COVID. She had been in the hospital for about 20 days, and she had beat cancer, but she was having problems breathing. So I think I kind of felt a little bit of that as well. And like you said, just anxiety, period. I have had those type nights.
Yeah. Me too. I mean, I've had those nights of worry and anxiety, where you're not going to be able to go back to sleep, so you might as well get up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes, Carly, for me, if it's more of the to-do list, sometimes I actually can go back to sleep if I physically write down a list and I
Sort
make
it out.
them and write it out. And it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's on paper, it's done. Sometimes I am able to get my mind to rest, and go back to that. Well, it's hard to tell, and it's easy to miss the signs of depression, when we are so distracted with everything else that's going on with us, when we're sleep deprived, when we are anxiety ridden ourselves. It's hard to miss this, or it's easy to miss the signs, when maybe the person right next to you that's in closest in your life, or someone around you, may be suffering with depression, and maybe it just looks like the pandemic. It looks like some of the things we've been talking about that we're all going through. Just a couple of things I'll mention. In the elderly, depression is not a normal part of aging. Even though we do see a lot of seniors that suffer with depression, it is not a normal part of aging. So I will mention that. Seniors now, they may deny feelings of being sad. They may not use that word, like that I feel sad. They may just lose interest in doing some of the things that they normally enjoyed, which right now, again, everybody is kind of stuck not being able to do those things. Um, they may report or say they just have less pleasure in life. Like they may, not find as much pleasure in the things that they do, but very often do they actually use the word sad. But certainly seniors can suffer from depression as well. Now, when we look at the rate of suicide attempts in seniors, it's actually, white men over 74 are our highest category, and they're more likely to use a gun. I don't know if
Oh my
you've got,
gosh.
yeah. When we look at older men, especially, they are more successful in completing a suicide, and it's a less of a cry for help, and they usually mean business. They're done at that point. When you look at younger adults, children and teens in suicide, they may have, they usually, there's more attempts more often, but they're less likely completed attempts. They're usually more of a cry for help. And so, older adults are twice as likely to actually complete the suicide. So, guys, if we're caregiving for an older adult, just know that they may be suffering during this time, especially if they're in a facility where they're not able to see you and have visitors. And so, know that they could be struggling. So some of the statistics I'll just share with you really quick. During the COVID-19 pandemic so far, depression symptoms in the US and reports of depression have risen. No surprise, right? Some of those statistics, though, this is for Americans, what would be considered mild depression. So depression is usually described in its severity, like mild, moderate, severe. So mild depression, what typically was around 15% before the pandemic, right now reporting about 26% Americans reporting that. The moderate level depression, before the pandemic was around 5% of Americans, and that's increased to 15%. The moderately severe, but not quite severe, went from 2 to 8%. And then the severe, this is the scary part, the severe depression, which is those suicidal thoughts and really dangerous, was under 1%. It was a very, very small percent of our population. And now it's over 5%. A lot of people are really hurting. A lot of people that are suffering. In June, there was a study that said 40% of U.S. adults have some mental health concern, whether it's depression, anxiety, starting substance abuse, considering suicide, things like that. Does somebody have a comment? Oh, okay. That may have just been accidental. But in our series for the next several weeks, we're gonna talk more obviously substance use, talking about domestic violence and other things that were as a result of this COVID isolation. When we think about suicide, I mentioned, can everybody hear me okay?
No, that's why I was raising my hand.
Okay.
You breaking up a little bit. When you asked if someone had a question, I could hear you good. But then as soon as you started getting back into the meat of the subject, you're breaking up. It's kind of sounding like a lot like robotic now. It may be on my end. I don't know if anybody else is.
I'll have to swap over to Brittany's account real quick in her office because somebody's working on my computer. But yeah, it was like kind of like breaking up, but I think it sounds okay now.
Is it better now?
Yes.
It is better now?
Yes.
Okay. So I shared some statistics. Were y'all able to hear that?
No.
Okay. Well, I'll go back and just review that really quick. So some of the statistics of depression rates in the U.S. From before the pandemic to after the pandemic. And Janice, jump in if you can't hear me, okay?
Okay. Are you talking about the severity, like the mild?
Yep. Did you hear that?
I got that part. I heard that part. Yep. It was afterwards.
Okay. So right after that, I was saying that in June, there was a study that showed 40% of Americans had some sort of mental health concern, whether it's suicide, depression, anxiety, substance abuse. So we know that families and caregivers. In this series, you're going to hear from other experts talking about domestic violence and talking about. It says my speaker is not working. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
It was just breaking up again.
Yeah, it's breaking up just a little.
It's cleared up now.
Every time she stops, and then when she starts back and getting into it, it starts breaking up again.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's so weird. Oh my goodness.
But it sounds fine now. It sounds fine.
Give me some indication when you can't hear me so I stop talking.
Okay.
So some of our highest risk groups when we are talking about suicidal tendencies, certainly populations who are at highest risk are right now people who have contracted COVID-19, people who have a compromised immune system, maybe somebody that already has pre-existing substance abuse problems, right? And so those are in our highest risk. The rates are highest among those age 18 to 24. Believe it or not, essential workers.
Heard 18 to 24, and then it started breaking up just a little bit.
Yeah, so the next highest group is essential workers. You heard me on that?
Yes.
All right. And then after that is minority and racial ethnic groups, Hispanic 18.6%. So it keeps telling me a warning about my speaker. I hope you can hear me.
It sounds okay to me.
Okay. All right. And then, of course, I already mentioned the elderly, especially seniors who are in a senior living community, maybe where they're extremely isolated and missing their family. So those are kind of our highest risk groups. I do hope that you can hear me well, because I wanted to share with you my own personal story and how my family has been affected by this. I did get permission from my son to share. He's 17. He just turned 17. But we are a family that's never had major issues with mental health. We've nobody's on medication for depression. We've never had a whole lot of concerns for that. My husband and I have been married 25 years. um my son is a straight A student. He has a great relationship with his older brother. He has friends. He is not what you would look like on the surface as any child that had a problem. And he developed depression. We didn't know. Just like I described at the beginning, it's hard to tell. So I thought behaviors like, sleeping late and crazy schedules all was a result of the pandemic, right? Like we've talked about. So I didn't notice anything different. But he slipped into a deep depression to the point where he was diagnosed with the severest of severe depression on this, on that scale. The depression caused him to have such a skewed reality, a skewed idea of what reality was, that he made a plan to end his life and put that plan into place, to the point of leaving notes for loved ones, and securing a weapon and making with all intention to go through with it. And so I think what has been the hardest thing for our family to learn through this is that we were not immune to these issues when I thought we were. I think that was that false sense of security. But praise God, and that's all what it was, is God stopped him and intervened. And I see Janice praising, right? He did not go through with it. And he came and spoke to me and said, I need help. And
Thank God.
So thankful for that. And not every family has that happen, though. Not every family is fortunate like we were. But again, I think the hardest thing now, having gone through that, and that was less than 3 months ago, the hardest thing is just realizing that for so long in the beginning, for weeks, I blamed myself and the guilt was overwhelming and thought, why is this happening to my family? To now it's a realization, why not my family? So many families for the first time ever in their life are dealing with these issues, like I said at the beginning. And so with Jacob's permission, I began to share our story, in an effort to help other families, whether you are a caregiver for a child or an adult, or maybe you're worried about your spouse. But you certainly use my story today to open up the conversation. Some of the conversations I've had with Jacob since then, this was in October when this happened, mid-October. Some of the conversations I've had with Jacob since then that I never dreamed I would have with my child were, he felt he could not meet my expectations when it came to his grades. He had been lying to me about school. He has said he didn't mean to hurt us. He didn't realize he was still dealing with guilt from losing his grandfather, my dad, which was 2 years ago. Think about teenage boys. They don't talk about this stuff. We are talking about this stuff now in my family. He would share with me that he had anxiety sometimes about going to school and having to be the smart one, because he always made straight A's. And the pressure to do that was overwhelming. He'd never shared that with me before. And to think that he thought there was no other way out, right? And then the conversations have shifted to how will I one day tell my wife and my kids about what I've gone through? And how will I be able to talk to my friends and my teachers about this? And so, you know, can you guys hear me okay? I want to just encourage you to talk with your kids and talk with your loved ones. And, you know, we've got to take the stigma away of depression, especially for boys and men. We got to take that stigma away and talk about it and say that it's okay if you're having these feelings. Let's talk about it. Anybody have any comments before I move on? I was going to talk about some coping skills for those with depression and for caregivers.
I just would like to add, if I may, you're absolutely right. We have to take that stigma away from boys, because I'm the oldest out of three. My brother and I are like 6 years apart. He's the knee baby, and I have a sister. We're 10 years apart. She's the baby, and he holds a lot inside. And when here lately, he's been doing a lot. He's been doing something I've never seen him do before, and he's actually been crying. Crying when he talks. He gets really emotional, but and I guess maybe that's him maybe letting things out. You think with the
Well,
crying?
It's a huge red flag for depression.
Mm-hmm.
And absolutely, I mean, he's trying to get some stuff out. But I would talk with them about talking to a professional,
Mm-hmm.
seeking a counselor, or have him talk to his doctor. Because crying can certainly be a symptom.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else have a comment? For us as a family, as we've trying to learn coping skills now for something new that's in our life, and was thrusted upon us really with no warning. One of the first things that, for me is it's honesty at all cost. Even if it's bad, I want to hear about it. Just be honest. Let's just be honest, right? What I'm also learning is that it's easily to overwhelm. And me as the parent and the caregiver, I want to fix things. That's just me. I want to fix it, right? And so sometimes by doing that, I offer just too many options and too many choices when it comes to, like, hey, what do you want to do today? You want to play a game? You want to watch a movie? You want to do this? You want to go for a walk? And I'm just like constantly, my brain is spitting out all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my son was able to communicate to me and say, Mom, that's overwhelming. Just keep it simple. Give me two choices and I'll pick one. Because if you give me all of those choices, I'm going to pick nothing. And I thought, well, that's great. Yeah, I can work with that. That's great instruction for him to be able to tell me that. And so that has been huge as we learn to communicate. There are a couple of things we've tried that haven't worked, but I'm going to share them because they may work for someone else. The psychiatrist mentioned that we could have a whiteboard, so that instead of me driving him crazy all day saying, how are you today? Are you okay? Are you okay? That maybe he could just put a number on the whiteboard on a scale of 1 to 10 to just let me know how he's doing each day. I bought the whiteboard. He never used it. But it sounds like a great idea if you've got a kid or someone that's willing to use it. Another idea that we've played around with but haven't implemented is having a secret code word, so that if he is extremely overwhelmed and stressed, he could say this word. We haven't done that yet, but that was another idea that his psychiatrist suggested. And I'm saying his psychiatrist because after all of this, when we had to seek out resources, right? We didn't have a therapist. So luckily Jacob agreed to go to an inpatient psychiatric hospital for a week to be evaluated. And then I was able to get him a local psychiatrist and a therapist that he sees regularly. And then also me too, a therapist that I can see regularly to help deal with this side of it from the caregiver. You know, what's been the hardest thing for me is being able to offer moments of independence back, to give him back independence. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I never want to leave him alone. When I have him like right here next to me all the time, and I'm very claustrophobic, I'm sure, and hover. But when I can offer moments of just brief moments of independence, is what is a goal of mine, right? To try to build that back, know when to back off and kind of give him his space. And so it's tough. I found that routine is more important than ever. And so we actually got him back in school instead of the remote learning, and that's been incredible. So I would say absolutely work on that routine. Simone, you said you have a code word that works for your kids as well. You want to share with us? Are you going to unmute and share with us? I don't know.
Yes, yes.
Oh, hey.
Give me a second to walk away
Okay.
because it's private. We have a word that we have discussed, and I have two small children on the autism spectrum, and one of them has seizures. And it's not always easy. And like somebody mentioned, homeschooling and virtual stuff and everything, it is overwhelming. And I asked them both last spring, when we had enough of each other, we need to tell each other to step away, or, hey, I want to be alone. But you cannot be hateful about it. You may feel anger inside already because your buttons have been pushed so much. But we need to figure out how to say it nicely to where everybody would understand. Okay, this is it. We have to stop. We have to just be quiet, and we might need to walk away to different bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And it works. Sometimes they say, hey, mama, you're in the delta mode. And I'm like, you know what? Yes, I am. It's a delta. That's
Mm-hmm.
the word. And they use it too. Mama, I'm having a delta day, or I'm in a delta mood, or I'm in a delta situation. But we all know what it means.
Right.
And sometimes they forget that they can use it, but we all kind of understand when somebody says it. They're like, oh, I feel the same way, mama, I get it. This is it, so we don't have to yell. We don't have to scream. We don't have to prove our point, and I don't know where I got it from. I don't know how I came up with it. I think somebody said it or I read it somewhere, but we have implemented that. And this is one thing that really, really works, but we use it only in like very, very rare situations.
Yeah.
But it does work. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, Simone. Yeah, that's great. I love that. One of the other things I would encourage you to do, especially if you have someone in your life that has depression, whether they've had suicidal thoughts or not, I think it's important to talk about the future. And to have conversations about dreams and ideas of the future, whether it's next week or next year or when, 20 years from now. Sometimes I just like to, before we go to bed, mention something that we have, planned for the next day, just so that the last thing I hope that he's thinking of is, oh yeah, I've got that thing tomorrow. I just am still terrified that he's going to go to bed and have these thoughts of this. He doesn't want to be there the next day. So I always try to add something at the end of the day, to something of excitement or something, even if it's just mundane, but just mention, oh, we've got this tomorrow, just so that he knows that there's a future, there's a plan. And he often has talked about plans for the future, like I mentioned, with maybe a wife. And he's talked about one day when he has a garden at his own home, he wants to grow green beans. And so we're having some great conversations about the future. I mentioned self-care earlier, and I'll mention that just again briefly before our time's up. I want to also take other questions, but self-care, a lot of times people think that is something real elaborate, like I'm going to go get a pedicure and a massage and have all this, fancy stuff done. Self-care is taking a shower and eating a meal, having 5 minutes to go to the bathroom by yourself. And self-care is getting rest, it's just the basics. And so, probably the biggest thing is to know self-care is not, there's nothing selfish about self-care. Self-care is not a dirty word. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Now, one thing I have found that has helped me in my self-care and also helped me really kind of through this process is I keep a gratitude journal or a prayer journal because for me, and Janice, this helps me sleep. If I can, the last thing I do before I close my eyes is write down something I'm thankful for. Otherwise, my head goes to all of those negative places and the what ifs and the worry and the anxiety. And, my doctor's given me some medication for that, but I'd like to try to not use it if I don't have to. And so the last thing to be on my mind is just a mind of gratefulness and thankfulness for the little things, for the big things. That really helps me. I don't know how you guys feel about aromatherapy. If you like essential oils and things like that, but just like taste, smells can really transform you and really kind of take you back to a time in your life or a place. I love the beach. Anybody else love the beach? Carly, yeah.
Yes.
For Christmas, my sister-in-law gave me aromatherapy putty. Have y'all heard of this?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's amazing. It's like silly putty. It's put out by Crayola, and you can just play with it and mold it. It's for adults. But the set I got, am I breaking up?
No.
Okay. The set I got has 6 different fragrances, and my favorite is coconut.
Oh.
Smells like suntan oil or the beach or something. And I just want to hold it in my hands and smell it. And like while I'm watching TV, just rubbing it in my hands. But it has the consistency of silly putty. It's the strangest thing. But you can have lavender and chamomile and all these different fragrances. And she gave me that for Christmas because she knows, of course, what we've been going through. And I was like, this is the best thing ever. Because it keeps me busy with my hands, right? That restlessness sometimes that we have. And it's just got those neat aromatherapy attributes to it. So Google that and y'all look into that. Other things as parents and caregivers, I encourage you to do as a coping skill, exactly what you're doing today, connect with others. Have that support group within your community, whether it's online or in person. Connect with your place of worship, whether it's virtually or not. I think spiritual care during this time is so important. It's something that my family has had to lean on as well. For me, in enjoying just maybe a cliche movie that's like a chick flick or something, sometimes that kind of puts you in the right headspace to make you feel better if you have the time to, the luxury of that to enjoy something like that. Exercise increases your body's natural endorphins, which are giving you those natural hormones to ward off depression. And so, that's something important as well. Yoga, just walking 20 minutes is what they say you need to do to really increase those endorphins if you can get 20 minutes in. I mentioned prayer journal, but sometimes just being still with prayer and meditation is also helpful. Anybody else have any tips or coping skills that they do for self-care? I know everybody's different.
Really my best method of coping, and thankfully my husband knows what is best for me, but truly just taking, even if it's 5 minutes, going and laying in my bed in complete darkness, no TV, no sound, no nothing, just me, my bed, my eyes shut. Not that I'm sleeping, just laying there with, like, just having 5 minutes just to lay there, silence, darkness. And that is how I bring myself back from the chaos, from feeling overwhelmed. Even if I'm just come home from work and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I've had a long day, I'm tired. My husband says, go lay down for a minute.
So
Because
basically you're putting yourself in timeout.
basically, and I love it. Yes. So just laying down, what I also call resting my eyes. I tell my husband I'm going to rest my eyes.
Yep.
That is my go-to.
Yep.
I was going to say also, don't feel bad about letting your children be on the screen for a few minutes, a little bit more every now and then. If that's the only way that they will stay engaged and give you the 15, 20 minutes, don't feel bad about that.
Yeah.
Don't do it every day, but special moments so you can get peace and quiet.
Yeah. I tell you, caregiver guilt is something I think we all have to work on, because you feel guilty about every decision you make as a caregiver. And you know what? You just have to know that you just are making the best decisions you can with the information you have each day, right? So we're all doing the best we can. And, tomorrow, if you get new information about a certain thing, you might make a different decision, but just it'll just, don't let it keep you up at night worrying about decisions. My mom is trying to make decisions right now for my grandmother, and I've had that conversation with her multiple times in the last couple of weeks. You just got to make a decision that you can live with, and make a decision that you can sleep at night and know that you've done the best you can, and you just can't beat yourself up over it. One day at a time, Simone. Thank you.
Yes, that's my granddaddy's. That was his favorite, kind of like singing, sort of say, take one day at a time.
What is it? One day at a time, sweet Jesus.
That's it. And he was country too, because he wake up and he'll watch Country Boy Eddie in the morning time. But yes, that was his thing. Take one day at a time.
One thing I'll mention as I close, one of the reasons why I think this was so hard on my family, what we went through, is because where I work at Amedisys Home Health, we're the only home health provider that can do home health for depression and anxiety. And I talk about this all the time. I mean, I call myself an expert, and I am, and I think that's why it hit me so hard, is that that it was happening around me and I didn't realize it. And so, again, I just encourage you to never assume that someone's okay. People are dealing with stuff, and you just never know what someone's dealing with, and just open up the lines of communication. But if you do have a loved one, for adults only, not for children, where I work at Amedisys, we do have psych nursing available. Now, we are throughout the state of Alabama. Not all of our locations offer the psych nursing for behavioral health, but a lot of them do. And you can certainly reach out and find out, but we can send a nurse into the home setting for adults over the age of 19, to help them with depression, anxiety, bipolar, and schizophrenia. Some of those are the common diagnoses. And so that is a unique thing about our services, and it is covered under most insurance policies. There are a few that don't, but let me know if I can be a resource to anyone. If you ever have questions about either home health or any of the things we've talked about today, hopefully you can tell I'm kind of an open book, and I'm happy to share, other resources if you have questions. And Carly's and Brittany are both great wealth of knowledge too for resources in the Huntsville area as well. Well, all over, because they're all over the state.
Yeah.
So I know you guys are all over the state too. So thank you so much for joining us. I can take a few questions if anybody has anything else they want to share.
I thank you for the information.
I'm sorry.
Tamika, you got something you want to share?
Yeah, I was wondering, can we get her contact information when you send out the email after this, please?
Yes, I will. When y'all, if you want her information, also if you want to get a training stipend from this, if you haven't already received one since October, you are eligible for a $50 training stipend from this. So what you'll have to do to get that is email me, and I'm the one who sent out the Zoom information. So just respond to that email and say, hey, I was on the meeting today, and I'll send you back the link for the survey you have to take, which is a post test to get the training stipend. And then I'll also include Julie's information.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So yes, if you're, just respond to that email, just say, hey, I was on the training, and I'll send all that back to you. So yes.
And Julie, I have a question. I know you said routine is important. Do you have like I think exercise is a good one. Do you have like a whole bunch of like a running list of healthy things that help with endorphins or the positive endorphins?
Well, exercise is the main one. And so I would talk to your doctor before doing anything like in terms of over the counter medications. But vitamin D, vitamin B are both usually low in someone that's suffering with depression. So that might also be something to look into, but I would have your doctor talk to your doctor about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Seasonal depression, especially this time of the year, usually folks are low in vitamin D.
Because they've been stuck in the house.
Yep. But the best natural endorphins would be, well, I mean, I hate to say it, but exercise and sex. Those are the two big ones. Go home and don't go home and tell your husband that.
We're just being
I
real.
am totally lacking in both of those areas. And I keep trying to convince myself, and I am going to get going doing something, because at the beginning of last year, I had my sugar was extremely high. I'd never seen it like that. Only one time, I think, when I was carrying Kyrie, and I did really good. I was gestational diabetic. Towards the end, I started wanting to try to eat what I wanted to eat, and it got up to like 400. But last year was 500. So I started doing exercises here in the house, and like you said, 30 minutes. Started off one time a day, and then I started doing it in the morning and trying to do it in the evening. And so that it makes you feel good, because I've always been like an active person. Back during school, I love volleyball. I played basketball. I was in the band. Played flute, was a majorette, but I'm not as active now. And I'm so sorry, my phone cut out. Can you see me? Okay.
We can still hear you.
We were at the Lakeshore Foundation because I had Kyrie in aquatic therapy, because his right arm has always been tight since birth. And we would go out some days when we couldn't get in the water, if they were cleaning or whatever the situation may have been, we'll use the field house, and I walked the track. I lost 12 pounds and didn't know that I had lost 12 pounds till I went to the doctor. And that was just from walking.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah. So
another thing,
and that's another thing, Julie, it also, I know it's good for me, like you were saying, like the endorphins, but it does also help you sleep good. It makes you sleep good.
One of the other things that I have really kind of found that I've found success with the last 3 months is just I constantly have some little project going on around the house. Because for my husband and I, especially early on, in the last 3 months, whenever we would get still and it would be quiet, we would cry and get upset over what we were going through. And so
Right.
he does woodwork, and he's worked on so many projects.
Wow. Yes.
Lots of
Staying
kids.
busy.
Yep, staying busy. So whether it's,
Mhm.
I mean, I cleaned out the refrigerator and the freezer. Like literally everything was taken out and scrubbed. I cleaned out all of my junk drawers in the kitchen. And just like every weekend, I'm like, okay, what are we gonna do now? And I just stay.
Yes, that's good because and I actually said that I was going to start doing some of that too because I have like a closet in the front room that's really kind of packed, and so that's absolutely a good idea as well. And I think I am going to start doing some of that. It helps. My grandfather worked for the gas company for like 40 years. And even after he retired, he still would get up like at the crack of dawn, like before, the hearing the chickens crow. He would get up, he would go out and start his car. They used to get newspapers like delivered. Then the person that was doing the route got sick. So he would go to the shopping stack and get a paper and come back and have coffee and stay in the yard. Just stay constantly busy. So it helps. It really does.
And it kept me from just constantly eating.
Yes, absolutely.
While we talking about cleaning, they got the minimalism challenge, which is get rid of an item a day for 30 days.
I can do
So,
that.
What
get
is
rid
it called?
the minimalism challenge. The minimum challenge, and it's on, it's on Netflix. Netflix got two. It's two guys, and you can YouTube it.
Okay, I do
Guys,
YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. The minimalism challenge. It's
Okay.
just so every day you like declutter and minimize an area in your house.
Oh
And
yes,
so
that's
My
good.
husband would
I didn't
appreciate
know
if I
about
would
that.
take part in that.
you gotta try it. You gotta try. It's a new year. Let's just try it for the rest of the month.
True.
Yeah.
We love board games, even with teenagers. We have board games. They were all over the house, which was a sign that they were being used. And so I collected board games, which was almost 75 games. And I cleaned out the bar stools in our kitchen underneath the bar area. And I took the stools out, and my husband built a cabinet underneath there. So they're in the kitchen where right by our table that we use to play games.
Awesome.
Yep. So now it's like we just have game night at our fingertips.
Yes.
Well, guys,
Yeah,
thank you so much for being on. I know it's almost 3:00. We don't want to keep you guys too much longer. Happy Friday.
yes,
Thank you. Happy Friday to you and to you as well, Carly.
Yes, happy Friday. I'm so glad y'all joined us.
And we're gonna
It's
meet
always
again.
a joy for always all of us to get together and just, in a time like this to
And
see
let it
other
out.
faces and talk to other people. So I really appreciate y'all taking the time. And Julie brought some really, really good information that I think we all could benefit from. Times
Absolutely.
are tough, life is hard, and we never ever know what each of us are going through. So if we can try to help ourselves, help the ones around us, the close people in our lives, that's the least we can do, to then extend that into the outer layers of our lives. I think that's great. So
Yes.
just please, if you would like a training stipend, if you have not already gotten one this fiscal year, email me, let me know you were on the training. I will email you the link for the post test, and I will send Julie's contact information if y'all want to reach out to her for anything. And Alabama Respite's always here. If you need somebody to talk to, any sort of resources, let us know. But if everybody is okay, doesn't have any more questions, we'll leave it at this. And we will have part 2 of this series next week. It's next Friday, so keep a lookout for that. That link I'll send out. I can't remember if next week is domestic violence or substance abuse, but I think it's substance abuse. It's one of those. So I look forward to seeing y'all then. But I hope y'all have a good weekend. Stay warm and let us know if we can help y'all.
Thank you. You all have a good rest of your day.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.